G'day guys, I've been putting this off for a long time, and it's time I got started. A while ago, I revisited some of my older dinosaurs, and I've always wanted to do the same with some of my dragons. But with so many models to review, it got pushed back and back and back until I decided it was time to break the pattern. So today, we're going to look at my very first dragon, which started it all for me, the McFarlane Series 7 Warrior Dragon. This of course also means it's my very first McFarlane Dragon, at least the first that I bought for myself. Before McFarlane came along, my idea of dragons was very traditional, the archetypal European dragon, for which the Dungeons & Dragons versions were my initial, shall we say, holotype. Of course, I later learned to appreciate more unusual ones, but I wanted my first dragon to be as close to that familiar form as possible. So, scouring the eBay listings, I got this. The very first thing that struck me was the detail. Up to that point, I hadn't had any dragon models at all, let alone one of high standard. So, this was an eye-opener for me. As you can see, the detail is really outstanding, especially for when it was produced in 2007. The first thing that caught my eye was the detail of the armor. We have these large areas of overlapping plates. Upon closer inspection, you see it's not just a single layer, but multiple layers. Centrally, you have one row. Then lateral to that, another. And another. And yet another. Creating a very pleasing kind of geometry. And within each plate, you see a little texture, tiny pitting, that hints at the organic nature of these plates. Now, this overlapping motif can be seen in various areas of the dragon, such as the shoulders, looking almost like pauldrons. And the front of the thighs, similar to tessets. And over the back. You can even see yet a different kind in the serratus area. Now what I like is that because of the color, some of this detail is not made vulgarly obvious to call attention to itself, but for which you actually have to look carefully to discern and appreciate. And down the tail. You can really see the pleasing appearance of a blend of inorganic looking armor with organic scale. Again, you see that pitted surface. Here in the tail, as well, you notice some irregularities, like these ones sticking out. And there's even a segment where these plates are missing, perhaps from a previous injury. It's really this kind of little detail that made the McFarlane Dragons real for me, and afford so many areas to fire the imagination. And after this they appear again, only to create a wicked barb at the tip. Now this armor is on the underside as well, encasing the pectoral, abdominal, and beyond, so that you can see that this is a very well protected dragon indeed. Even among these overlapping plates, you'll see the morphology differs regionally and from top to bottom. Between these plates, you see the underlying, presumably more vulnerable parts of the dragon, the mosaic-like, well-separated scales. In the throat, the forearms, and hands, and down to the talons. On the inner thighs, then on the outer thighs. The scales look like scale armor. That's the case down the tail here as well. Again, see how the scales change into a different form towards the tip. It's really very pleasing to see all these different textures. Next we go to the head. Now from the top, you see that the overlapping plate motif continues, though in a different form, sharper and shorter, and creating the horns we see in many dragons. In sharp contrast to this, you have these very woody looking, more like antlers than horns, which are very unusual. Inset among all these plates are the two eyes, each perfectly painted, with a wet gleaming look and a care that you'd expect in more expensive models. Mouth is open in a roar, of course, and here you have a forked tongue that's so dynamically curved, in a way that T-Rex sadly probably could not. Then there are these mandibular spikes protecting the underneath of the chin. This dragon certainly looks hard to kill. Now color-wise, it's hardly faded from when I first had him. I believe this is actually a blue variant of the original, which is green and white. Now, blue, of course, is the color I wanted, since it's more traditional. That was what I wanted for my first dragon. The Dungeons & Dragons blue dragon, of course, has a lightning breath weapon, and the blue and orange yellow somehow invokes that image for me. Now you'd have noted that this color fades from ochre orange down to the blue. You can see how the color varies from region to region. In some areas, almost looking like teal or green even. The blue areas are not just a lazy color of blue, but with shades within. And the transition of the yellow can be crude in some areas, but overall nothing I can't live with. And finally, the wings. Now for the wings, you still have some of that overlapping motif up here, with a more ordinary scale look down the wing fingers. But what's really remarkable is the way the wing membranes have been rendered, with detail like the veins and other textures. There's a kind of leathery quality to the wing. You see how this faded here on the lateral side. And on the medial, the addition of some patterning that still looks organic. And there are these tattered edges indicating real use by a real animal. Now, articulation-wise, I'd consider that this has none. There are swivel joints, but only as necessary to facilitate the squeezing into a small clamshell package. You can see that as soon as you remove something, the color discontinuity just spoils the whole thing. Effectively, there's just one really good pose where everything comes cleanly together, and that's this. The base is a simple cropping of rock, and while the detail is very nice, it's let down by the color. There is one flat wash with perhaps just the slightest bit of fading. It is a real pity because, as you can see, the care put into the sculpting is really very, very good. There are what looks like patches of vegetation here. So that's basically it. My very first McFarlane Dragon, and also my very first dragon model. And it still looks amazing, even if it came out in 2007, 15 years ago. The beauty, the ferocity, the detail, and that's what McFarlane Dragons gave us in the heyday. And I wonder what more they could have given us if they'd continued. I recently saw signs of a potential revival with the Series 8 Eternal Dragon, though the form of it didn't excite me, and it doesn't have the beauty that we associate with the McFarlane Eternal Dragons. Still, the upcoming Berserker looks a bit more promising, so who knows, I might get that. So that's it for this look back in time. I'll share some thoughts about this or any of the other McFarlanes you may have had. I'd love to hear from dragon lovers on their own experiences. I'll see you in the next video.